Hey guys, this is Doa, and this is Cartographer. That's right, it's another week, it's another Tuesday, so it's time to take a look at another map that we're going to see some games on, analyze a little bit. We've got a Terran versus Zerg lined up today, actually. It's going to be two High Masters Terrans from the NA server, and with me, as you can hear him clicking away in the background possibly, is, of course, Infinity 7's Axslav. How you doing, man?
Hey, you guys doing pretty well.
Cool, cool. So do you
Excited to check
have...
out another new map.
Yeah, it's awesome. Do you have the thread for the map open by any chance?
No, let me grab
Okay.
that. Actually, can you link that to me?
Yes, I can. Let me just bring it up real quick. If you go, I'll find it real quick here. Things are a little bit crazy, guys, because literally like 1 minute before I was about to go live, the computer decided to blue screen. So that was a lot of
I found it,
fun.
actually.
Yeah. So basically, we restarted everything. Everything is almost back up and running correctly. So sorry about the delays and kind of like awkward things because normally we're much more prepared for this, aren't we?
Yeah, I would hope so.
The conviction in your voice will convince everyone, I'm sure. All right, I linked you the map. There it is. It is going to be TPW Silver Sands, and let me go ahead and get that up on the screen. There it is. Check it out, guys. It's a pretty cool map. I've taken the liberty.
Definitely see the resemblance to Blistering Sands, though.
I know. I think it's got the same tile set.
Yep, same tile set, and the two-player map, both at a corner, the two main pathways through the little high ground Zelnaga towers that are going to be pretty important. Of course, they took out some of the features that are most complained about on Blistering Sands, like that backdoor rocks in the main.
Yeah, now it's kind of interesting. What do you think about the? I feel like in StarCraft 2 right now we're always talking about the third base. So let's just jump right to that. What do you think about the third base locations for these two bases?
They're pretty interesting. It's there's not one super obvious third because you can take the one that's kind of easier to protect as isolate case, but you have to split your army, put half in the third, half in the natural. That'd be the one that would be in a straight line. If you're going from your main to your natural, just keep going that direction. It's kind of a flying jump over to it.
Right. You could either take that one as your third, or possibly that other one that's just like if you're looking at the bottom right base, the one that's directly above it. I could see some people taking that as their third, but it's a little bit harder to defend.
Definitely. I mean, that one you can move much easier between your third and your natural.
Right.
But it's also, you don't have quite as many chokes, but then you can make one united front. So it's interesting. I think it's actually looks pretty neat as far as it's not a super easy third, right? A lot of people complain about the maps, like a lot of people didn't like that about Terminus. So it's very easy to take a third, or about maps like Daybreak, for example. It's a little easier to take a third, or like Cloud Kingdom and stuff. So this is it's definitely harder than those, but it might not be too hard. So it should be good.
I feel like kind of the placement of the Zelnaga towers too would help you keep that third that seems a little bit riskier too if you wanted to, because it does cover like all the running lanes basically that people would use to attack it. So if you had control of the Zelnaga towers, the base would be a little bit safer, I suppose. But
yeah, but I mean, if you're strong enough to hold that position, you're strong enough to be killing their third, not worrying about defending yours. That's more of an anti-harass type detection than an actual save yourself from an onslaught type thing.
I'm excited about seeing some games on this map. It looks cool.
Yeah, me too.
So we have, we can see it on my screen, not your screen right now, but we have two High Masters players. One is named Crazy, the other is named Honey Bear, and as you can see, there's their stream info on the screen. So definitely check those guys out. They're both champions for jumping in and helping us out. And so we're going to watch them play. I'm going to ask them if they're ready. I don't know, are you ready to get into the game?
I am.
All right, cool. So we're doing things a little bit differently. Usually we have you play against Poke Bunny or someone else, and we'll probably go back to that at some point. We'll have pros playing against each other and then do a little bit of post-map analysis. And but this time we're going to do a little bit of analysis kind of in real time, on the fly. So the game is beginning. Good luck, have fun to these guys. And I just told him, play normal. Play how you'd normally play, and we will see how things go on this map. So let me go ahead and flip over to the loading screen. And there you see that lovely overlay, which does not fit the loading screen at all, but it's the thought that counts, right?
Yeah.
That's right. Thank you. Thank you for your support. So Blistering Sands, this was a map that we saw back in the old map tournament, Yieldy map tournament, just a few weeks ago. Just thinking about that
we
tournament.
did. It was, I think, I'm trying to think of how many times we actually saw it, because I do think it was vetoed. It was one of the maps that was
Hmm.
vetoed more often than not.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Even you saw maps. I think Blistering Sands was vetoed quite often, and then Steps of War was another one that was of all this. So it was one of the least liked of all the old ones.
Hmm.
Where I think like Coolest Ravine and Desert Oasis weren't vetoed very often. Those are the ones people kind of remember a little bit fondly, I guess.
Yeah, Kulas Ravine. I don't know. I always loved that map. It always produced just crazy, long, intense games. It was always a lot of fun.
Yeah.
But here we are on the map, Silver Sands, and in the bottom right we have our Terran player Crazy, and in the upper left we have our Zerg player Honey Bear. And this is actually one of the. I think this is the first time we've had a Zerg on the show. I think it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's been. I think it was mostly me and Poke Bunny, and then I don't know. Yeah, there was a week I
Yeah.
think
Oh,
you
yeah.
had.
That's right. Last week we had a Zerg on the show as well, but that was
Okay.
a PVZ. So this is the first Terran versus Zerg I think that we've had on the show. So there you go. And Honey Bear, I believe, he has multiple Masters accounts, over 1,400 points, I guess. And I believe Crazy said his account was a little over 1,000. So as far as Masters League go, it's pretty high up there in terms of points.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. So I'm trying to think of aspects of this map that affect TVZ, and I definitely think the Zerg do want to take the more central base.
Hmm.
Is the more, I guess, the one that's not the one that's in a line at Nook. They definitely want to take the more center one as their third.
Yeah.
And I mean that's also it's a little bit easier to move between to deal with drops. It's easier to spread your creep around there. If you take that back third, I mean, not only is it really weak to drops, but your opponent can get in some really really good positions pushing that, because to defend, let's say they push from where those like the bushes are, those vision block bushes.
Hmm. Yeah. I see
It's
it.
going to take you quite a while to get your creep spread that far, so that's more of like a fourth base probably. And also, it's also a closer distance to them if you're trying to do a marine tank push. I mean, in the TVZ matchup is the one where almost the rally distance matters the most,
Hmm.
because there's no warp gates, there's no and Zerg runs fast, but Terran is typically on the side of the aggressor for a lot of the game, and they're one of the slower races. So as far as bringing in reinforcements.
So now, what do you think of being able to wall off with just a supply depot and a barracks?
I think that's pretty cool. I mean, there's other maps like Belshire Beach. You could do that. Um, and I think there was one or two in the past you could. I think Belshire Beach is the only one that's used now in tournaments where you can wall off that easily.
Hmm.
It's definitely, for TVZ, I don't think it makes really a big difference. I mean, some people drone scout. I mean, well, almost everyone, scouts at some point or another.
Right,
Not
right.
everyone, though. On two-player maps, as much as coming, especially actually with the way how fast the over could get there. This is a map you probably wouldn't even see drone scouting, because, the over can get there. It actually seems very, very short relative to
Yeah,
some of the other maps.
I think the thread said it was like 125 from natural to natural, so that is a
Okay.
little bit smaller of a map. Yeah, it doesn't seem too small. Like it doesn't
No,
seem really
no.
cramped like Blistering Sands, for example, did.
Yeah, it definitely looks. I like the space of the map.
Mhm.
But yeah, that thing is more of a PVT type thing. It means one of the big aspects of PVT right now is that you can use your probe scout, and if you scout out their gateway and they put that second depot to block you from getting into their base,
Mhm.
they can't be building a second proxy barracks very early, because then they couldn't afford that second depot.
Right.
So with the walling like this, it allows the Terran to do basically to hide their all-in cheese builds, and there's a chance you can just straight out lose to that a little bit more likely. But for TVZ, I don't think it's nearly as big a deal.
Yeah, it gives him just like another little option or so, I guess you could say. But now, I had a question, but then I forgot what it was. That's how it goes. So it looks like, just kind of doing a quick overview of what our players are doing right now. 2 gas being taken at the moment by Honey Bear. He did go for hatch first, of course, and did also go for that 4-queen build, just getting 4
Yep.
queens out really early, getting the creep spread going, being defensive against Hellions and things like that. And it looks like it will be reactored Hellions from Crazy as well, which I think is a pretty good choice on this map. I mean, it's the standard in TVZ pretty much no matter where you go, but on a map like this where you can get to the naturals so quickly and kind of just be in that area so fast, it seems to make it even more of a logical decision.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Yeah, there's a lot of different angles to spread creep on this map too. So
Hmm.
the 4-queen opening is a little bit stronger. I mean, I think you're seeing it more and more nowadays. Anyway, I think I probably see it about 70% of the pro level
Oh yeah.
TVZs. It's it used to be more like you'd only see it occasionally. Then as soon as they buffed that queen range,
Yeah,
it's
that
almost
was.
like the dominant build.
Well, it just makes it so easy. I mean, you have two queens out there spreading creep. I mean, how many Hellions are you going to need to get past that? It's going to take
Yeah,
a ton, you know?
you have to commit to it very very heavily.
Yeah,
Some
exactly.
people can end up almost over. They're overcommitting their queens out there. At a certain point, I've actually seen Idrid use a lot of TVZs for this, using his 4 queen opening. And you can push that creep out so far, but there's a certain time when Terran can get stem bio. That if your queens are still out there, and if you lose, 2-3 queens to those stem marines before you can get support out, then you don't have those queens to shoot the medevacs later, and it can all crumble downhill on you.
Yeah, no kidding.
So it's a build that you need to practice and know the timings of when you can have your queens on the map and when you need to pull them back, because when you're doing this build, all your build is designed around assumption that these queens are going to be key element in holding off early pokes and attacks, and so if you lose them early, it just all falls apart.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you're just not going to have the larva to produce. The other thing, though, I mean, look at how fast the creep spread is for these guys. I mean, actually, both of these guys are playing pretty well, I got to say. I mean,
Yeah.
usually, when you bring in some players sometimes, they're a little bit nervous. They do kind of crazy things from time to time. Oops, he lost 3 creep tuners there. That doesn't help. But overall, yeah, I think both these guys are giving us a pretty good game so far. The creep spread for Honey Bear is just awesome. I mean, really shows off the ability to get that creep out there fast with the 4-queen build. And he's got a tight wall at home, so yeah, he has nothing to worry about at all with Hellions or anything like that sneaking by. So in the Zerg base right now, the Zerglings are taking down that little patch of destructible rocks. What do you think about that? I mean, there's one on both sides, I believe. Yeah, these just kind of little bit of destructible rocks at a very wide choke area. Why do you think that's in there?
I think that could be probably make it easier to forge expand is one thing you throw destructible rocks there. So you can make it easier to forge expand, but then also you can make it so you can still pressure by killing the rocks and opening up for some early aggressive options.
Yeah, you don't need to kill like your own pylon or something like that to get out.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't really know why he was killing them though. I think that would only make it easier for Hellions to sneak in. I don't see why Zerg needs more service area quite there. I mean, it is true that if there's Marines and tanks at your doorstep, you want to be able to get out of your base faster, right? You don't have your units bottleneck through. But the choke to your natural at this point in the game is not a choke you're really planning on finding. And so, I mean, that you're probably already in a very bad spot if they're slow pushing and they're at that spot. And the fact that this makes you more vulnerable to Hellions seems like wouldn't be a good idea to kill them. But, he left them, he just let the rocks know who was boss.
That's right. Brought him down to 57 hit points. He's like, there. I think they learned their lesson.
Now this I really, really like, or I was about to say, okay, I thought I was going to make a full net of burrowed Zerg. This is something that Zergs just, I guess, are too lazy to do in StarCraft 2, but you saw all the time in StarCraft 1. To help scout drops and everything your opponent doing, you make an arc of burrowed Zerglings around your opponent's base. So
oh, yeah.
He kind of started to do that. He had the one in front of the actual, his one at the potential third, but if he had one on the far right and the one on that bottom, kind of at the very bottom of the other third, so we could catch drops going, that would have been really, really neat to see.
Yeah, you raise a really good point because, yeah, burrowed Zerglings were so much more used in StarCraft 1 than StarCraft 2. I mean,
yeah, for scouting.
Me with my friends, not at a high level at all by any means. We're using burrowed Zerglings all the time to, block bases, scout, things like that. So it's actually, that's always blown my mind that people haven't done that as much in StarCraft 2. I am amazed when someone brings that up. I'm like, you know what? That's absolutely right.
Yeah, and it's such an easy thing to do. There's some great fungals going down, and this is where those 4 queens really can play a huge role. Unfortunately, they're not here, but killing those medevacs that makes the fungal so much stronger.
Yeah, yep. Those queens could have played a huge role, but instead they're just going to be out there spreading some more creep. It looks like the push is handled to
Other way,
anyway,
yeah.
so yeah, that's fine. The medevacs actually just kind of tempting fate by flying there. They need to move, man. Those medevacs, okay, there they go. They're very brave medevacs. But things are looking pretty good for Honeyberry. I mean, he's got a 4th base up. He didn't really lose a whole lot from that. He lost, some drones. He's lost 11 throughout the course of the game, so not really anything to worry about for Zerg on 4 bases. The creep kind of continues to spread, and Crazy taking his 3rd as well. And he's, although he lost that army, is not in like the worst position ever. So this game could go on a little bit longer, I'd say.
Yeah, the one thing I'm a little worried is he still is only on 1 factory. Okay, now he's finally adding the 2nd one. A lot of it was just, he was a little bit slow and saturated natural, and then the third moved out a little bit late as well.
Hmm.
So he didn't have that quite, the gas and the mineral income. But normally one thing you see the Terrans do a lot is just increasing that factor count, because that's how you deal with infestors, right?
Yeah, exactly.
If Zerg has a high infestor count, you need to be able to have a high tank count, and you need to be able to replenish those tanks after every battle.
Yep.
So I think he might struggle with that, and with the Zerg hive tech going on the way. Maybe he can have if he gets a really high medevac count, maybe that can work too. That's another way to deal with fungals, but it's gonna be tough for him, I think.
Yeah, I mean, medevacs can help you deal with fungals, but then once you have fungal and baneling, the medevacs aren't going to help out too much. So I definitely think the tank way is a better way to go, and that's kind of seems to be what we see most pros doing. I always love to use Bolt as an example. That does play a very bio-oriented early game, but then usually switches into a fairly tank-heavy late game, and
Yeah.
most of his
Well,
TBZs.
it's everything heavy. He just
Yeah,
has really
well,
good macro.
he's just all around heavy. Yeah, yep. It's a pretty heavy style, but that's what
Yeah, I mean,
makes him
that's
so
the
good.
the level of the Korean Terrans is so much better macro. It's mostly due to the SCV production.
Yeah.
They're usually so fast at saturating their bases. And then if you combine that with the mules, it means they'll always have more money than your Zerg or Protoss counterpart, because they're not going to be much behind you in the worker count, and then you add those mules on, and they just can afford so much stuff. Now this is interesting. So he's going to drop, and this is like I was saying, these top bases, and you're spraying through the middle. This top, he took it as his fourth, but could have been his third, is kind of a little bit tricky to defend from drop play. I almost would like to see him put like a preemptive spine or spore, even one of each or two spines, just because it's such a tricky base to defend, unless you want to, or leave a whole squad of units there or something.
Yeah, I think you normally would see something like that. I mean, I suppose if you have guys out in that choke kind of in front of the natural by that base, you get there in time, but as it is, he's going to lose a couple drones here, and that's not going to be enough Zerglings. There we go, more coming in, but kind of bottlenecking a little bit, but it's just so many, it's going to be enough to scare him away a little bit. But yeah, that base is definitely going to be something to watch. Looks like another drop going down at the normal third, and not really a whole lot there to defend it. Huh.
And all these drops, they're hopefully going to do damage, but the bigger thing is they're gonna try to keep the Zerg busy.
Yeah.
While the Terran can go ahead and clear out creep, although he's not been quite as prompt with that. But it's mostly to keep the Zerg busy, and that's the whole goal, because you can see the Zerg react with his whole army, and then of course Terran doesn't have to worry about being
Look at
sieged
that.
up.
Infestors on the high
massive
ground.
fungals
Very
there.
nice fungals. Oh, he needs to pull those back, though. Oh, man, I feel like he lost 3 infestors
Yeah,
very
that turn
unnecessarily there.
That turn from could have been amazing into like maybe
Yeah.
only a slight win. Losing,
Yeah.
those key infestors. Oh, if he gets some more here though, that'll okay.
Okay, well, the fungals do help. Yeah, he does enough. GG, actually, that's enough for Crazy, and he's going to go ahead and leave the game. So I'm going to go back to my view, and we're going to get them in here for, I think we have time for another game. Let me look here. Yeah, 326, we definitely have enough time for another game. Let me just make sure that they are up for that. Let's see, game 2. And so while we wait for that, so go ahead and let's kind of recap that game a little bit. I'm going to bring up the map screen right there. Now, towards the end of the game, that actually the map started to actually feel a little bit cramped. I wonder if this map would start to see some competitive play, if people would start saying that it was maybe a little bit too small. I'm not ready to say that myself yet, but I don't know. Just kind of looking at the game at the end of it, it started to look a little bit cramped. What do you think?
It did, but I think that also might have been because both players ignored there is 2 bases at the top right and 2 bases at the bottom left.
Yeah.
And both players totally ignored that. So if you zone out those sections of the map, yeah, you could say it's cramped. But I mean, you can do it with a lot of maps if you just pretend certain parts of it don't exist.
Yeah.
And I think that's just maybe not as experienced with this map, and it's
Could
actually
be.
something. The similar map, Sandshorn.
Sandshorn Mists, right?
Sandshorn Mist, exactly. So if you play Sandshorn Mist and you pretend that the corner bases don't exist, and you pretend that what most people think is their fourth bases don't exist, then it's a pretty cramped map.
Right.
It's kind of similar to this. So but you do have those corner bases, and what I'm interested in is in maybe if you saw a lot more game sense, how the gameplay would evolve on the map, utilizing those corner bases. Would you see maybe Terrans take those early? Because you can lift off, and a lot of people, like we saw, nobody actually ever scouted those bases the whole game.
Yeah.
They're kind of out of the way. Would you see Zerg players take them early, and then if they're going mutalist, use counterattacks to defend them instead of directly defending them? And with those 2 ramps down there too, there could be some interesting things. Both for it looks like it might be pretty easy to siege those bases. But I don't know. I think there's a lot of room to basically if you take those bases and you force people to move to the corner paths
Uh-huh.
and not always go straight through that center path, then it kind of opens it up more for the opponent to move around army to set up flanks and counterattacks and things like that.
That makes sense. Now, as far as that goes, I think maybe another thing that was making me think that way too is just that the creep spread was so prevalent, I guess you could say. There's a lot of
Yeah.
creep on that map towards the end, and that's going to make any Terran player feel a little bit cramped as well. But I think we are about to move into game 2. Let's see if people are ready.
The big thing that led to that creep spread was when Crazy first moved out with that 2 medevac Hellion Marine force. He didn't clear any creep, which is the standard is you move out, you do at least 1 or 2 scans to kill, maybe 10 tumors with that
Right.
force, and then you go and engage. And the other thing that allows you to do is it allows you to stutter step backwards without speedings and banians running you down. So he kind of just went in for that big attack without, because he went in from the far left side where there wasn't much creep, and so he didn't have to worry about killing it, which is a lot of people going through the front first to kill creep tumors and then circle around.
Yeah. All right, well, here we are in game number 2, and again, we have our Terran player Crazy in the bottom right and our Zerg player Honey Bear in the upper left. Honey Bear played a very, very solid game just for people just joining us right now. Honey Bear is about a 1,400-point Masters League player on NA. He says he actually has a couple accounts up in that range. And Crazy is a little over 1,000 points himself in Master League as well. And they were kind enough to jump on the show with Axslav and I and play a couple games for us so we can kind of take a look at this map. And, here's the thing is that I liked Blistering Sands for the tile set, but that was about it. So if we can get a good map on this tile set, I will be so happy, man. I don't know what it is, but I just love the desert tile set.
Yeah, it is really nice. And I think, we kind of saw more of a one-sided game.
Yeah, a little
and
bit.
I think a lot of that is also in Terran versus Zerg, it's really on the Terran to use the architecture of the map to their advantage, right? We're using siege tanks primarily, and using siege tanks and drops. And so when you're playing on a fresh map, it is a little more difficult, I think, for Terrans to adapt than maybe the other 2 races. And especially, I think Zerg might have the easiest time adapting new maps in general. I think probably, Protoss has to know where to want to position your army, deal force fields, and how to make walls and stuff. And Terran really has to know where to put tanks. And I'm looking at some more, and I'm seeing actually a lot of potential places that Terran can use to make it, interesting. Kind of like similar to how Shakuras Plateau has those little ledges where you can drop tanks in the middle. I've noticed there's one of those. I'm not sure if you can. I assume you can drop them. Kind of along the middle. There's 2, right?
Yeah.
Like up and down of that middle, like where the SCV is going through. If you look,
right,
right. The past one right there, and if you drop like 2 siege tanks there, that's such a key spot to control because then that first of all, there's no way they can then defend that. Let's say if Honey Bear takes the base to the right of his natural, in that little crevice right there where it was dropped, there's no way he could defend that. If you're sieging on the high ground, a little Marine squad can run up there and take that out without a problem.
Yeah, exactly.
And there's also a lot of spaces around those islands that the Zelnaga towers control. There's a lot of good positions for tanks there that can protect, like even against the other third the Zerg took, the more conventional one.
Right.
You could kind of sneak into backway. You could put some tanks, like one tank on the place where the Zelnaga tower is, then one tank on that low ground between the 2. You can siege it up there.
Yeah,
I think there's definitely a lot of room for aggression and clever tank placement here.
I think that's going to be a great spot, actually. I'm looking at the upper right base area, the third base that Honey Bear took last game. But yeah, just behind those line of sight blockers, if you siege up some tanks right there, you could hit the mineral line potentially. It kind of reminds me of when you siege up tanks in the gold base area on Shattered Temple. You know, and go after the natural that way. You could have kind of the same sort of army configuration there. And
make them kind of come around that crevice to you. Or even you could put them behind the minerals. There's actually low ground like island there.
Oh yeah, there is. That's right. Yeah, okay.
And so you could drop tanks there and drop Marines behind the minerals.
Oh wow.
And I mean, there's definitely a lot of. And I'm not sure. I don't even necessarily think that would necessarily be too strong because, if a Zerg has infestors, they can use infested Terrans. If they have mutalisks, they can use those. And also, that island is small enough that a Zerg could, move in spine crawlers or something if they had to. So it would definitely be a very powerful tool, but I don't think I think it's too early to say it would be too strong. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly, and that's kind of the best thing about good maps, right? Is they have things that the races can use that are powerful but not game breaking. So, it'd be cool to see a Terran player use that. We'll see if maybe Crazy decides to go for something like that this game. Looks like he's going for the Reactored Hellion opening again, which is not too surprising. Pretty normal 4-queen opening from our Zerg player as well, just kind of like what we saw last game. And I was going to say something else, and then I forgot again. I don't know what's with me today, man. I'm like having all these thoughts, and then I say other things and force them out of my mind. But you mentioned earlier that Terran just generally has a harder time adjusting to maps because they need to use the terrain more to their advantage. I think that's totally right. I mean, Zerg, to a certain extent, can just be places much, much quicker than Terran can, obviously. So that's going to compensate for a lot of little mistakes here and there that you might make in terms of army positioning.
And Zerg also just wants like very open areas, right? And
Yeah,
it's pretty easy to look at a map and say, oh, this is the open area, I want to fight them there.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and this area, you know, another thing I like about this map actually is that there are some rather large open areas, like just outside the choke by the natural, kind of going into that area where there's a little high ground you could put a tank on. That's a pretty wide open area. I mean, if you could engage there, you'd be doing just fine. But then there's also plenty of narrower running lanes too that Terran can kind of take care of. So this map has a good balance of wide places in good places for it to be wide and narrow places in good places for it to be narrow as far as entertainment and things like that goes. So, yeah, I don't know. Like, the more I look at this map, the more I like it, honestly.
Yeah, I like it too. And one thing to note is that, you know, some of the maps we looked at, the Zelnaga Tower gives you like total dominance and you can see everything. This map, it's not quite true. Like, you can definitely see the Zerg could sneak units around the left and then the bottom and get past that Terran Zelnaga Tower without being seen, which I think is cool. There's like 3 hexes there that are outside of Zelnaga Tower vision if you go like basically down and right of the Zelnaga Tower, where Zerglings could just barely kind of sneak around a vision as long as the player knows what the vision is.
Yeah, it's like if you're careful, you can avoid it, which is another, you know, tenet of a good map too, where it's things that people can take advantage of if they're, you know, smart enough to do it, if they can execute it well. So it just plain brings more skill into it, which is always a good thing.
Yeah, and that's another spot to watch. Like if you're Protoss, you got to watch for little Marine squads coming there, or Zerglings, or if you're Terran, you got to watch out for Zerglings or Zerg Marine squads, or, you know, there's all little kind of commando squads can sneak around the map well, which is pretty cool.
Looks like Cloaked Banshees this time around for our Terran player Crazy, so he's going to try to surprise his opponent a little bit. It was a fairly economic Cloaked Banshee, though. He does have 3 command centers up fairly quickly, and he is putting some pressure on with Hellions as well, while he makes all the SCVs and things like that. So he's still going to be in okay economic shape, although honestly I got to say he's actually not really making SCVs all that diligently this game too. And this is kind of I kind of think what you touched on a little bit earlier, where at pretty much every level right now in Terran versus X matchups, Terran is starting to rely maybe a little bit too much on their mills. They're just not making a lot of workers compared to the other races.
Yeah, I mean that's we saw actually last game he was slipping up on that a bit as well, which is partly what put him on the back foot, I think. And that's, you know, that's like, honestly, people look at Terran's like Poltem ranking and they look at their amazing micro, but what's actually the bigger gap between them and your very, very good Terrans like Crazy, but maybe not at that pro Korean level, is really just that ability to, you know, constantly macro and constantly add in production buildings at the right times, constantly adding workers at the right times, and just absolutely explode with their
you need a way to compensate for the fact that your army builds one by one out of buildings over time rather than being warped in or coming out of a bunch of eggs at once. So yeah, having a strong economy that you can move quickly from base to base and then having enough production facilities to use it.
Very fast drone pull. I mean, he did have the Overlord Scout, but that was really well timed.
Yeah, he knew exactly what to do, man, and it seems like he just had stuff in the right spot.
Yeah.
Well, Cloaked Banshees, no Overseers or anything like that, no Spore
There was
Crawlers.
one being morphed, it was morphed into main and stayed over.
Okay.
And if he can get a fungal, that'll be really, really big.
And he gets one.
Oh, he missed one of them, though, but he still...
He could get another one. Well, Queens do a lot of damage when there's that many of them, but it looks like the Banshee will escape. Yeah. But, so some damage being done. Let's see. Crazy killing. It looks like 8 workers total this game,
There's a lot of mine time lost there as well. It shifted him off from the main. He's a little bit slow in pulling them back.
Now, we've got 2-2 on the way already, but we also have 2-2 going up for Terrans. So I kind of like what Crazy's doing this game a little bit better than how he was playing last game. I think the Banshee harass is
His
great.
upgrades are faster as well.
Well, yeah, he knew that he wasn't going to be able to do a lot of damage with Hellions, just kind of based on his experience last game, based on the 4-Queen opening again this game. So he went for Banshees and then went for double upgrades as well pretty quickly, which I think is something that I always love seeing Terrans go for double upgrades because I think it's way better than people kind of realize.
It is, and so much of the power of the Terran army is Marines anyway. So a lot of the reasons why people hesitate on getting upgrades is especially Zerg and Protoss. Zerg is like, well, they'll affect mine faster and high tech timing, or Protoss would affect your Templar and Colossi timing. But you know, with Terran, it's not going to affect your Marine timing. You know, it may slow down your addition of extra factories, but.
Do you see that he fungled that Banshee once and took it down to 2 hit points, and he had to use the second one to kill it? Whoops. That's why you always kind of throw it in.
It's better than losing an Infestor, right? Which could have easily happened if he, it's better to use up a fungal than lose an Infestor.
yeah. That's. I mean, I think that kind of is why you always see Korean players, or really a lot of pros as well, fungal once and then throw out like 2 or 3 infested Terrans just to make sure that it dies. You know.
Yeah, but if you throw out 3 infested Terrans, it's the same as fungal
it's
twice
more
anyway.
expensive, yeah.
So I mean, I don't think that's that big a deal.
Well, never mind then.
It all adds up though.
Yep. So we've got a fairly secure third base for Crazy right now. And the upgrades just really continuing to roll for Honeyberries. Really going crazy with the upgrades. And I don't know, what do you think? Do you feel like Crazy is playing maybe a little bit too passive this game? I feel like he's a little bit worried to move out.
I think his style is actually okay. As long as he moves out around the 14, as long as he starts moving out around now and starts pushing creep back and setting things up, like this is a style. In fact, if you actually look at many of the top Korean Terrans, they really won't do anything for most of the game, and then they'll all of a sudden explode. Because if you move out with small squads early with this much creep spread and with the amount of Zerglings and Infestors out, it's so easy to have a small squad just destroyed. Like that's what set him back for last game, was that squad hitting the third just kind of died, and he killed some Zerglings, but you know, it's not going to do too much.
Oh, look at that! Oh wow, huh? Zerglings burying right in front of that medevac, but I think they both saw each other. I would imagine they probably did.
Yeah. So like I like this right now, except I don't think you should be moving the Marines on a giant clump. Maybe 5, 6 ahead, killing this creep timers. Yeah. And then as he's doing this, throwing out 1 or 2 dropships and then keep pushing out. There's really there's no rush in TVZ, really. I think some players rush a bit too much.
Players are worried about Broodlords, I think, a lot right now. Oh, Zerglings coming in for a counterattack at the third base, but doesn't do a whole lot of damage. But, yeah, I feel like Terrans are under pressure to kind of kill Zerg earlier on now because Terran players are still kind of struggling with late-game TVZ a little bit. They're,
they are struggling with the late game.
Yeah.
But a lot of them come out too early. Like, there's if you come out too early, then you're going to miss your big push that you could hit before Broodlords, and then they're going to have Broodlords before your big push comes.
Right.
So in fact, I was watching some of the Home Story Cup European qualifiers early, and if you watch like Koss, and also if you watch most of the top Korean players, they play really, really passive until right before those Broodlords will come out. And then they just move out and they try to do critical damage, you know, trim all the Zerg bases. So maybe the Zerg can just barely get Broodlords out to hold their second or third.
Oh, yeah.
But then Terran's playing 5 base versus 3, and then it's okay to play against Broodlords.
Well, there's a lot of Protosses looking for those timings as well.
Exactly.
I mean, you want to hit right when they want to be making Corruptors so that they have to make, you know, more Roaches or something instead. And then the Infestors never show up, and you have an easy time. Well, not maybe easy time, but you have an easier time winning the game in that situation.
Yeah. And the key thing is to find that right time. It's easy to almost feel too pressured to move out and move out with not quite enough units. That's almost worse than moving out too late a lot of times.
Yeah, it's true. Well, big Zergling counterattack here with 3/3 Lings with the Adrenal Glands, I believe, at the third base here. Doing some damage, in fact, killing a lot of SCVs.
Massive fungals on a Terran army. He just almost got totally wiped. He lost about 50 Marines there. And the interesting thing is he chose to retreat. Where really that Zerglian counter couldn't break his rally.
All right.
He needed to do counter damage, but he kind of chose to run him back, and I think that's what cost him the game.
He kept his Marines really, really clumped up as well, which didn't really help the issue all that much. I think that's going to be about it for games. Let's see, because we are at about 7 minutes out, so I don't think we really have a whole lot of time to go through another game. Let's see. All right, and so let's just kind of, I'm going to bring up the map screen again, and so let's just kind of go over that game a little bit more from a map perspective, right? We've got we kind of had a similar build from Honey Bear, right? He did something kind of rather similar. Took the natural, took the third base that he took before. It really wasn't until, a little bit later that his creep spread was out there quite a bit farther that he thought about taking that fourth base. But here's a question for you. Why, and I think that I kind of know the answer to this already, but I want to have you explain it. So why would players take that expansion in the top middle if you're the top left rather than the fourth in the lower left side of the map?
Yeah, I think it depends on the race. Although I think most races will probably take that middle base. I actually could see Terrence taking the other one. But definitely for the Zerg, it's so much easier to spread creep to there. It's easy to move your queens between the two. It's easy to move your Zergians between the two. And the only benefit of the other one is there's a kind of a small choke going into that.
Yeah, right.
But that's actually an anti-benefit for Zerg. That's a detriment.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah, because Zerg doesn't want to fight in chokes. They don't want to have a choke by the third where their opponent could run their army in or drop an army in or something and then force field off or just have tanks and marines and your Zergians have to funnel into them. So Zerg really wants to avoid those bases.
If you really were, it seems like if you really were dead set on taking that base, you'd have to control that little platform that the Xel'Naga Tower is on as well. I mean, and that would just leave your natural exposed. So overall, I mean, this is just going to be a better expansion to take, definitely. So then the question is, I guess, when you get to like the late game, and let's talk about Protoss a little bit, because obviously we didn't see a Protoss today. You're a Protoss player. How would you play this map in a PvZ, for instance? What do you think you'd be tempted to try, like the first couple times you played on this map?
Well, I think definitely. I think two base pushes would probably be pretty strong, and also the third is pretty open, so it's one of the harder. It would be very difficult to defend a third early on against a Max Roach type push if your opponent's splitting up the units and controlling it well.
Yeah.
I think it might be doable. You'd have to test that out a while, but it would be very hard. But I think two base pressure could be very strong, especially like we mentioned, how you get set up tanks on the other side of that vision blocker, and you can make them come around the corner. You can kind of like push around that corner and stay near the edge, and the Zerg won't get that great surface area. You do have to come in from that side of the third, though. For example, the Zerg's at the top left, they come around the left side of the third. That's a much further walking distance, so you are more exposed to counters. But if you move out early enough, I think that might be a good way to play. And then, of course, the late game, there's a lot of places where Brooders can kind of hide out. There's a lot of angles where it might be hard to engage the Zerg army. But I think the late game is where you'd really want to work the corner bases. And so you would just, because they're kind of a longer walking distance, they're out of the way. And that's where you'd have to really use the mobility advantage of Protoss and take advantage of the slow Brood Lords, where if you make sure they don't take either corner base and you take one or both of them, wherever their army's not. And you don't try to defend them from you wall them off and you build cannons so Zergians can't kill it. But if they do a determined Brood Lord attack, you just keep counterattacking, and you meanwhile you take the other corners and counterattack in main. And I think it's a pretty good map to play the mobility game on.
Yeah, because I think kind of what you're saying is basically you would split the map off. If you were in the bottom left, you would try to take those corner bases and then just kind of split the map with them only having. Let's see, 5 bases on their side. If it went to the late game situation, and like you said, kind of take advantage of the less mobility that the late game Broodlord and Fester type, army has on that case.
Yeah, I think that is. It's. I mean, it is hard to say without playing it more, but that's basically the idea. That's my first impression approach I would take to it. I think you actually could do some really good. We're talking about the timings right before Broodlord hits, which for Protoss is often you start moving out like 14:30 and you try to hit like 15:30. This is off a 3 base, and you move out when you're like 170 and you hit when you're at 200. Those numbers might have been half a minute too early, depending on how the game goes, or it could even be a couple minutes too early. There's a lot of bloody battles earlier on, but anyway, so I think it's a good map for those timings because. I could see you even on a lot of maps you can trim the Zerg down to 3 bases, right? On this map, it might be possible to trim down to 2 before the Broodlords hit, and then then they could try to rebuild from there with their stronger army. But I think there's definitely you could definitely get some really good positions to fight like a Stalker Sentry Colossi army.
Well, I'd love to see ZVP on this map, just to kind of see it from that perspective, see which base the Zerg would try to take, and then just kind of how Protoss would try to deal with that third. And now let's talk a little bit about let's just go through all the Protoss matches since we were kind of light on Protoss talk today because of the matchup. Let's go PVT. Now, what would you think would be a good way for Protoss to approach this map PVT?
You definitely would have a very hard time taking a third here because whichever third you take, they can just move their whole army towards your. Let's say they do like a 2-base powering build, which is the most common build in TVP right now. They move out like 6-8 medevacs, whatever, like a big army.
Right.
And then it's if unless you go like mass blink stalkers, in which case you just die. Just that's they have more guys and it would be really hard to stop them from moving to your third, and then even if you maybe can beat them in a straight up fight, if you move to defend a third, they just jump to your main. It's it's so close right by air, but it's so far by ground to go that distance.
Yeah, you have to walk all the way back around the bottom to get from your third back to your main base in that situation. I feel like drop play Terran could just be really, really forcing the Protoss to move around a lot more than they'd want to on this map.
Yeah, I think it's the same as in every map. The most successful Protosses do 2-base timings because that's what works the best in PvT. And this map will be good for it because the natural is kind of wide, and what's even bigger than that is that right on the outside of the natural, there's a ton of space. So you're not having to funnel your units in to get to their natural so much, and you can have this great concave outside your natural that you're pushing into natural from. So with Colossi timing or Gateway timings, it would be, or even Immortal timings, they're all going to be very, very strong here. And then, if they don't want to give you that concave, they back up and force you to go through that choke of natural. Then you're in range where you can start force fielding the ramp, and you can probably work some other stuff. So I think it's an exceptional map for 2-base timings.
Now, as far as like PvP goes, real quick, we've got like about a minute left. What do you think about PvP on this map? I feel like with the cliffs around the main that you'd see a lot of Blink Stalker play on this map.
Yeah, definitely kind of similar to Antigua. Antigua is one of the maps where you see Blink Stalker play, Blink Stalker Observer being like one of the most dominant openings. And I think that's true here as well. I mean, of course, people would throw in things like DT or whatever, but that would probably be the most standard opening. And as far as, I think the positioning game would be really fun in PvP in this map. I think War Prisoners, I think the late game would actually be really fun. I mean, once you get past the Blink Stalkers would be the dominant opening, but if you get to those late games, utilizing the corner bases and harassing them, and also again that will probably be your fourth, that one that's kind of in that little inlet. That's so good for War Prison Rats as well. There's just a lot of opportunities for fun playing the late game, and then of course the position using those Delnaga towers and all the high ground advantages and setting up concaves. I think it looks to be. I would enjoy playing the late game, although I think it might be easy to die early to Blink Stalkers.
Well, I think what we may. I've got an idea. I just had it right now. Maybe I'll have to have some sort of like a Cartographer tournament. Where we just do a tournament using a lot of the maps that we've had on the show after a number of weeks. That might be kind of fun.
You could wait to get like 7 and have each player veto one and
exactly.
see which ones get vetoed the most too.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I think we're out of time. Thank you again so much, Nick, for coming on the show. I really appreciate it, man. Go ahead and do your shout-outs. I've got your Twitter and your stream info on the screen, but go ahead and shout out real quick.
Yeah, shout out to my team, Infinity 7, our great sponsors, Steel Series, DeviantArts, Zemotion, and GG Well Played and Twisted Oaks. And all our team members are all training hard to go to Anaheim. I hope we all do well there, in addition to the Blizzard United States World Championship Series qualifiers. Or finals, sorry. United States finals qualifiers for North America one. And then, you have my Twitter there. You can follow me at ISAxslav and follow my stream at twitch.tv/Axslav.
All right, awesome. Thank you again so much for coming on, and we'll hopefully see you next week. No, actually, you'll be in California, but we'll see if we can work something out. But anyway, that is going to about end the show. Thanks for watching, guys. This has been Cartographer. We've been taking a look at the map TPW TPW Silver Sands. That's what it is. I don't know why I keep getting the name wrong. Don't go anywhere. In just 10 minutes, we will be back with Team Arena Challenge number 3. It's going to be very, very cool, so don't miss that. We'll be back, guys, in just a moment. So, stay tuned. The stream's going to go down for just a second, but then we'll be right back.